In the 1950s, with the rising popularity of television, Hollywood would try a number of things to lure people to theaters by making an experience they could not get at home. There was, of course, the widening of the screen, including the ultra-wide CinemaScope format. I've also talked before about Cinerama and how they experimented with a new type of immersive screen. Another way they tried to convince viewers of the vast potential of the cinema-going experience was VistaVision. Developed at Paramount by John R. Bishop, the idea with VistaVision was to make the height of the frame higher and to avoid a grainy image when 35mm film was blown up on the big screen. When fed into the camera, the film was run horizontally with more sprocket holes on the top and bottom. After studios started producing all the new movies in the widescreen format, theaters had to buy new equipment to show them. So when Paramount announced VistaVision in 1954, there was probably a feeling of dread from certain owners that meant they would have to yet again buy new projectors. However, Paramount made it clear they did not have to buy new tools, and regular 35mm prints that retained the original aspect ratio were offered to exhibitors uninterested in spending extra money on special VistaVision projectors. The first movie released in the format was White Christmas, which showcased the possibilities of VistaVision with its musical numbers. It was a sizable box office hit, becoming the highest-grossing movie of 1954. You might expect Paramount to primarily use VistaVision on epics and musicals, but it was employed on a variety of movies. For example, it was also used on the Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis comedy Three Ring Circus and the film noir The Desperate Hours. Westerns were also a popular and logical place to use the format, with a wide-open canvas of the frontier. VistaVision was not exclusive to Paramount or even just Hollywood. The Rank Organization, a notable film distributor in the United Kingdom, released a number of VistaVision movies, including comedies like An Alligator Named Daisy and Doctor at Sea, and war films like The Battle of the River Plate and The Black Tent. As for other major Hollywood studios, while they did not use it nearly as much as Paramount or even Rank, VistaVision was nonetheless used on a few high-profile movies. MGM released High Society in VistaVision, although it was surprisingly their only musical to be filmed that way. Over at Warner Brothers, John Ford used VistaVision for his western The Searchers. Watching the Blu-ray recently, it definitely captured the size of Monument Valley, a favorite filming location of Ford's, and he and cinematographer Wynton C. Hodge took full advantage of the extra space to showcase its beauty. Meanwhile, Universal would license it for use on the war film Away All Boats, and United Artists would release the historical film The Pride and the Passion in VistaVision. For the most part, though, it was Paramount that was the biggest supporter of the format, and they made sure the vast majority of the movies they released used it. A director who took a particular fancy to VistaVision was Alfred Hitchcock. He first used it on To Catch a Thief to photograph the French resorts that made up the film's locations. He would then shoot The Trouble of Harry, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and Vertigo in the format, and even though he made North by Northwest at MGM, he brought the camera over for use on that movie as well. A movie that made particularly notable use of it was Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments. This would be the first and only film DeMille directed in a widescreen aspect ratio before his death 3 years later, and he more than handled the task of making the jump and utilizing the screen size for this epic biblical story. The Parting of the Red Sea, the most famous sequence in the movie, especially made use of VistaVision, helped bring those remarkable special effects to life. It took 8 months to film, but all that time and effort was absolutely worth it to create one of the most iconic scenes in film history. But like I said, if you went to see a Paramount release, chances are good it would be a VistaVision presentation. From musicals like Anything Goes and Funny Face, to westerns like Gunfight at the OK Corral and The Tin Star, to comedies like Teacher's Pet and several Jerry Lewis movies. However, in 1959, there was a decrease in productions using VistaVision. That year, it was used on the musicals The Five Pennies and Little Abner, and the westerns The Jaywalkers and Last Train from Gun Hill, along with a few other movies. In 1960, the number of VistaVision releases dropped down to 2. The western Heller in Pink Tights and the romantic comedy had started in Naples. Marlon Brando had started filming his directorial debut, One-Eyed Jacks, in 1958, but the movie spent so much time in the editing room they would not be released until 1961. Thus, it became the last movie Paramount released in the format. Why did they eventually drop VistaVision after being so confident in the format before? Other companies would produce cameras that could also capture the excellent quality footage of VistaVision at a lower cost and with less cumbersome equipment. Panavision would especially become the camera of choice for film productions, including at Paramount. However, VistaVision did not entirely go away. Paramount would sell off some of their cameras to filmmakers overseas, with Toho in Japan releasing a few movies in the format. During the production of Star Wars, George Lucas really wanted to make the outer space scenes look as real as possible as the spaceships flew across the screen. John Dykstra, the lead visual effects supervisor on Star Wars, was tasked with figuring out a way to make that possible. In addition to Dykstra and his team building their own special cameras, they took existing VistaVision cameras and modified them to be able to film the space scenes and make the models of the X-Wings, Millennium Falcon, and other iconic spaceships look like they're really flying around in that gigantic galaxy. The camera would then be used on several more big special effects movies. Of particular note is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. While the scenes with just the human actors were filmed with conventional cameras, a lot of the special effects driven scenes, like when Eddie Valiant ends up in Toontown, were filmed using the VistaVision cameras. So a significant amount of Roger Rabbit was filmed that way, with cinematographer Dean Cundy recalling in later interviews his fondness for the camera. A few years ago, there was a sudden resurgence in interest in using VistaVision. While director Brady Corbet was discussing with Lowell Crowley about how to film their historical epic The Brutalist, they hit upon VistaVision, feeling that would be the best way to showcase the buildings designed by the lead character, as well as other locations they wanted to depict. Interesting enough, this was not Crowley's first experience with the camera, as he previously did some technical work on them when he worked on Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, early in his career. While he managed to capture plenty of striking images on The Brutalist, he was open in interviews about the occasional difficulty with the camera. For one thing, they're very noisy, which can certainly be a problem with the dialogue scenes. Several months before The Brutalist premiered, another major production had also been filming in VistaVision. That was one battle after another, with Paul Thomas Anderson getting the camera from a surprising source. Giovanni Ribisi, yes, the actor from the Avatar and Ted movies, had long been an admirer of the camera and had bought and restored them and allowed them to be used on the film. Anderson and his DP, Michael Bauman's intent was to really pull the audience into the several action sequences with multiple scenes where the camera was placed inside the car. So it really feels like you're right there with the characters as they speed through the various streets and hills. While they encountered some occasional issues with the camera during production, Anderson and Bauman managed to accomplish their intended goals. For the film's release, a few theaters were equipped with special VistaVision projectors as well, although some people reported the film breaking down and the theater having to switch to digital projection. Another recent movie, Begonia, was also filmed in VistaVision. Director Yorgos Lanthimos had previously used it for Seeing and Poor Things and was eager to use it for an entire film. He chose to film Begonia in VistaVision mainly to showcase the close-ups of the actors and highlight their expressions. It's interesting that these three recent movies would choose that format, but all for different reasons, which shows its versatility and the multiple possibilities of how it could be utilized. And we have plenty more directors being inspired to film in VistaVision. Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights just used it, and on the horizon are Alejandro González Iñárritu's comedy Digger, Greta Gerwig's adaptation of the Chronicles of Narnia book The Magician's Nephew, and M. Night Shyamalan's romantic thriller Remain. It's been exciting seeing filmmakers try this format out again, although you could argue it never went away, as IMAX operated on a similar philosophy of opening up the screen even more to provide a bigger scope. And we've also seen new movies like Oppenheimer and Sinners, as well as One Battle After Another, being screened in 70mm IMAX. I'm curious who else will give VistaVision a try in the future now that it's made this major comeback and seeing what they do with it. See you next time.